everyone, welcome to my video on how to winterize a camper. I am by no means an expert or anything like that. This was just something that I wanted to do on my own because it costs a lot to have these shops do it, and frankly it's a pretty simple process. This video is designed for those people that have a pop-up camper. I personally have a 2813 Rockwood. I think it's a 232 XR, so it's one of the larger campers as far as pop-ups go. But my hope is this helps you out. And once again, this is something that you can do. It's something you can do on your own. And as long as it's done properly, it's great. It protects your investment, and it's something you can always continually do. Okay, so a few things you're for sure going to need when you winterize your camper. You're going to need a pair of pliers and or a wrench. Kind of up to you. Sometimes you can use one or the other. At least for my camper, I have to get access to the water filter, so I've got to pull off a panel with a screwdriver. And you're also going to need a bucket. So this is all in addition to the antifreeze and everything else that we'll go over. Okay, one of the first things you want to do is actually open up your hot water heater. You don't even have to have your camper up to do this. You're going to have a pressure relief valve here, and then you have your plug down here. So what you're going to want to do is just make sure you go ahead and blow off your pressure. Not a big deal. Once you're done, you can do that. You can close it, and then we're going to open this. So what I've found is usually if you can break this loose even just a little bit, then you can actually take it and spin it and get it the rest of the way out. And it's probably going to start dumping water on me because we went camping last time. There it is. This actually is how it's supposed to look. Okay. But what I'm going to do is take it and kind of tuck it up in here so that it's all ready to go for next year. Sometimes I try to tuck it behind something, but usually just kind of wedge it right in there so it's all ready to go. And if I want it drained faster, you open up your valve, and there you go. And that'll be your hot water tank. A quick note on the hot water tank, it's often a kind of question. A lot of people put this back in there. You don't want to. You want to make sure that it's open, and then just leave it here for the rest of the season. And when you get ready to de-winterize your camper, you're going to plug that back in. But for now, we're going to leave that open and off to the side. Okay, the next step is to actually go ahead and set your camper up. You don't have to set it up all the way. I mean, you don't have to put, both ends up. You obviously want the beds out so you can, access the sink depending on where your camper is, and make sure you can. Most campers require that the beds be out for all the water and everything like that to work. So just go ahead and pop it up just enough so you can get everything to work, and that's all you need to do. Okay, the next step, at least in my camper, here's my sink, and I've got my refrigerator here, and then I've got a service panel to get underneath the sink. So we're going to need to get to that. We're not going to turn the water on just yet, but we're going to go ahead and get to the parts that we need to actually get to next. Okay. So then, get my light here. So here is our water. Okay. And it's got our filter in it currently, and I will show you. And then I've got down here, because I just keep it here so I don't lose it, is the wrench you're going to need to get the filter off. So that's just something else to be aware of as you go through all of this. So next step is actually going to be to take the filter off itself. And I will go through and do that very, very carefully. Again, I have a towel down there because there's always some dripping that happens. It's just without fail. And you can try to pump it dry. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, which I may turn it on here just momentarily to pump that dry, or at least get it down just below the minimum level there. so I know that we are empty. Okay, now that we've got that out, you can see that we've got the filter in here. And what we're gonna do, or at least what I do, is I take the filter and I will actually just put it in my sink and I will store it up there. I often buy a new filter every year, but don't always. And right here, you're always gonna have your bucket with you. There goes your excess water. And then what we're gonna do is we're going to take that. I realize it's kind of hard to see. Trying to get it to click on there. Oop, almost. There we go. So you're going to spin that back on without the filter, and the reason is that's actually going to fill up with antifreeze. You're then going to take your wrench, and these you don't ever want to over tighten. If you see it's just 4 nuts holding it on, or 4 bolts rather holding it onto the wall. You just want to make it so that it's snug and there's a seal there. You can always periodically open it and check it. That's also, once again, why I leave the towel down there. Now we're not going to put the antifreeze in. Okay, the next step is actually to find your hot water heater. Mine is underneath the seat, one of the seats in the little kind of kitchenette that we have. And if you look, you're going to have 3 different nozzles and valves here. So obviously you can see where it comes in, but then there's this bypass valve that's going to be in the middle. So what we want to do is, so you can always know what direction a valve is going based on how this is turned. So if you see, this is crosswise to the line right here, which means that it is not going to, it's blocking that line, basically is the way to think about it. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to turn the valves, I'll have to move around here a little bit, on both of these to basically the off position, right? It's crosswise. And then we're going to turn this one to bypass. So now what's going to happen is, as the water flows through here, instead of going into the hot water heater, because we don't want antifreeze in your hot water heater, that's why we drained it, it's going to come through here and back out. All right, and actually it's going to come this direction because it's going from hot to cold. But anyway, so it's going to allow this to pass through here as we go through with this. So yours, when you winterize it, you're going to want it actually to look like this. It may not be exactly like this. Okay, we want it to look pretty close to that. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're actually going to pipe in our RV and marine antifreeze. This is supposed to be non-toxic, safe for water lines. That's really what it's for. Okay, now I did mine a little bit differently. So some people actually will have to unplug their water line, or some will actually dump it into their freshwater tank. I don't like that because it doesn't, your pump doesn't ever suck up all the water in there, and so you end up putting 4, 5, or 6 of these in there just to get it to run through your line, and then you have it in your freshwater tank itself and you have to flush that. It's kind of a pain. So what I would suggest that you do, and you can get these on Amazon, okay, it's a valve. You can also get, I think Walmart even sells them. You can kind of get them everywhere, but it's a valve that actually allows you to bypass the line if you want to. So what I'm going to do is turn my valve, which is hard for you to see here. So now, as the water pump primes, and I'll turn it on so you can see what I'm talking about here. It's going to start sucking this red all the way through, and it's actually going to be filling that. So just pressurized, and if you've noticed, I've gone through about a half of this tank. So what we do is we actually are going to start bleeding the lines, or essentially drawing this through the lines, but we want to go from the farthest point first, okay? Most people try to start with the sink. It's not what we want to do. We actually want to go with the farthest point. In my case, it's actually the shower. Okay, so here we are at my shower. We use ours just purely for storage, because ours is also a cassette, which I'm going to talk about how to winterize here in a few minutes. But you're going to go ahead and take your shower head if you have it, and what we're going to do is we want to kind of start systematically, and you can go with either the hot or the cold first, doesn't matter. But we're going to start with one, and we're going to turn it on. And we're going to wait until we have pink coming out of it. Now, we're periodically going to want to check back to make sure that we are not running out of our antifreeze. If we're not there, we're good. We're going to keep going. And now you can see it start to come through. And you can see some of that color is starting to actually be pink that's coming out. So I know I am good there. Now, once again, check the antifreeze. We're okay. I'm getting there to where I may want to switch it. But now what I'm going to do is turn this one off and turn whichever one I started with, the opposite one, which for me is the cold. I'm going to turn that on. Same process. Now I am starting to draw some air bubbles, so I'm going to go back and check my antifreeze. Okay, so I went ahead and filled my antifreeze back up. I actually switched over to the next tank, and it's going to start drawing in and pressurizing based off of that new system. I'm going to wait until once again it starts to foam and starts to turn pink coming out of here. You see the foam coming out, see it's kind of switch over. I'll usually let it run for a second or two, but this is also why you want 2 antifreezes in mine. It takes like 1.5, so I am pink, and so therefore I know I'm done back here. The other thing that I actually suggest that you do as well is go ahead and put any shower nozzle or anything like that in a Ziploc bag. I got this from another YouTuber, because the thing is you're going to notice they just leak. These aren't, you know, the best or anything like that, so that way you know you're not leaking, you're getting that red stuff anywhere else. Okay, next I'm going to come to my outside shower here, so you can see that. I started with the hot inside, so I'll start with the hot out here. I apologize for the angle. So what we're going to do is go ahead and turn on the hot, release the pressure here. Mine's got a little bit of a kink in it. This will, you're going to see the foam come out of this one quite a bit quicker because it's a lot closer. There it is. So turn the hot off, turn the cold on. There it is, pink. Okay, so we are all winterized here. Now this one, one of the challenges here is that there's really no plastic bag to put it in. So what I'll actually do is just let mine dangle as I go back inside. And what you're going to want to do, at least for me, is I have a sink runoff here, and you can either put your freshwater hose in there and go ahead and have it run into your bucket, which is something that I would suggest that you do, so that way it's not, you know, running down the side of your camper. I apologize, I said freshwater line, it's your gray water line. So it's coming out of your sink, essentially on the inside. Some of you, I think, dump out, and your really old ones will just dump out from the bottom, but what I'm gonna do is actually have it sit down in here, and that way as the water drains, it will drain into my bucket. Now finally, because we have worked our way from the back of the camper up to the front of the camper, right, obviously where your water pump is. Some water pumps are to the floorboard, most are kind of underneath the sink now. But once again, we started with our hot, so we're going to continue with our hot. We're going to look for that pink. Got pink right away because it's so close, and we've already flushed that line so many times. What we're going to do, cold, got our pink right away, and we're done. Now I'm a little bit off kilter here where I'm doing this. So what I will actually do is grab a little bit of paper towel and wipe that up, just because I don't want that red sitting in my sink throughout the winter. Okay, now we can go ahead and turn our water pump off, because we're actually not going to need it for the rest of it as we winterize the cassette. What you're going to see is here, I've got a little bit of this red left in here, because this is the tube that I created, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a screw in the end of that, or a bolt rather, and then tuck it gently back under here and close everything up. Just a quick reminder on these, when you put this back together, this is just particle board, so if you over tighten these you're going to strip it out, and obviously we don't want to do that. So you know, just make sure we do these really gently. Obviously you saw me do it with a a powered screwdriver, but I have it set on a really low torque so it doesn't ever hurt anything like that. Okay, so next is your cassette. Many of you may not even have this, so if you don't have this, you're done. So you're all set up, you're ready to go park your RV or camper or your pop-up for the winter. But if you do have it, one of the things that we have to make sure we do is drain this right here, because we have to drain all the water out of here. Depending on your tank, some will hold more than others. So what we're actually gonna do is you take this down here and you pop it out really gently. You don't wanna pull on these real hard. This is really thin rubber, okay? And then you're just gonna very gently pull down on it. And then what we're gonna do is work this little piece out and just let it lay on the ground and drain. Okay, and so we'll let that go for a while, and then what we're going to do is you're gonna dispose of any waste that you have in there. Once again, we don't use ours, but you're gonna dispose of any waste in here, you know, in a dump station or something like that, but just make sure you dispose of that properly. And the other thing you can do too, to make sure you kind of make sure this drains a little bit quicker, is you can go ahead and open the top there, right? Because what we're actually gonna do, pardon me, is we're actually going to dump that as well. So we're gonna drain both of those, and so we're gonna let that drain for a little while. But it actually takes a little bit longer than you think, because there's actually like a valve in there, is my understanding. I've never taken it apart. But that will drain. Now once this is done, once we have all of our water out of both of these, what I'm gonna do is actually go in and run the cassette one more time to kind of spit out any water before I go and drain this for the season. Okay, so now this is done draining. What we're gonna do is go ahead and put the top back on here. Turn that in. And we're gonna go ahead and put this back up, because what we're gonna do is basically fill this up right away when we get going next season. And there's a little plug that it sits up there on, and you'll feel it, and it's kind of tight. Push that in, and that's gonna be where that's gonna go, and so we're all set for next year. Once again, remember to go ahead and drain this. Also, on another note, we're gonna go ahead, if you haven't already, and you need to drain your freshwater tank, I'm assuming you've already done it, especially because you would have had to have done the bypass. But if you haven't, you need to go ahead and make sure that's drained. Most of us obviously drain it on our way back from a campsite or something like that. So, but that at least gets you done with the cassette, assuming once again you've dumped this properly. Okay, so here we are back in the cassette. Once again, I use mine for storage, but I always make sure that I have water in there and everything like that, just in case there's some sort of emergency or something like that we need to use it. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and run this a few times until it's basically dry. And you can hear it. You can hear it trying to prime. So I know that that's dry. I'm gonna release the water. Now, some people, you may wanna actually go through and do some people will actually run like a silicone or something like that in their valves. I don't do that, but that's something you could do if you wanted to make sure you preserve that valve for a lot longer. Once again, we don't use ours very often, so I'm not too worried about it. Okay, and before we actually go ahead and button up our camper again, I always like to throw in something that's going to keep the bugs out and the pests out. Some people will put in mothballs. I've heard dryer sheets on the floor, so that way if any mice get in there, I guess they don't like it on their feet and they'll get out. But you know, unless you're able to cover your entire floor, you know, mice are pretty wily and going to figure it out. So what I actually do is I take a paper towel, fold it over a few times, and I will actually put essential oils on it. These are from Young Living. And we know cedar wood obviously keeps, you know, that's what you put in your closet, right, to keep moths and bugs and things like that out. Thieves has cinnamon in it, and a number of other oils that I like to use, just kind of a, you know, and it keeps things fresh in here as well. So I'll put several drops in there, you know, nothing too crazy. And then I'll put the cedar wood on there. Now I'm not just going to leave this, you know, floating around in here. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to take a sandwich bag and I'm going to tuck it in the sandwich bag. But what I'm going to do is leave the sandwich bag open. So I want to make sure I'm getting air, you know, going through this. And then what I'm going to do is leave this on the floor right inside my door right after I button this up. So that way it kind of goes all the way throughout the camper. It's not overwhelming or overpowering or anything like that, but it really does get the job done. And And it leaves a really nice, pleasant aroma. Actually, when you go open your camper up after several months of the winter, you'll smell it just a little bit, and it's nice and fresh as opposed to the stale smell that we often get. So just another little trick there to keep your camper fresh. So one kind of quick thought. So I actually have the setup as a dual battery system, but it's all run off through this one battery. And you can obviously always do a trickle charger, which is what I have set up here. It's a solar charger. But the other thing I would really suggest to do is you, at a minimum, connect the battery. If not, go down to Advanced Auto Parts, O'Reilly, AutoZone, anything like that, and get one of these quick battery disconnects and set it up this way. So the nice part is you just roll it out and it's disconnected, especially if you have an electric winch or anything that's electric that's on the outside of your camper and you don't want people to mess with it. I mean, granted, they could hook it all back up, but there's that, so it's kind of a security thing. Plus, it doesn't drain your battery, because not both your batteries, especially if you're like this, are disconnected. So it's pretty easy and I think worth it. The other thing you're going to want to do is make sure that your propane is turned off. Some people will go as far as to disconnect theirs. I don't do that. I just make sure that the valves are nice and tight. I'm not worried about ours being stolen where they are. If you're worried about that, you can take them off, store them, in a safe place, preferably out of the sun. But if that's something you need to do, like I said, your choice. I'll leave mine on there, but I just make sure the gas is off, and that way it's off all the way through the camper. So just another thing to remember as you're buttoning the whole thing up, to check that, check your battery, and obviously before you tow it, you're always going to do one walk around. Another question that comes up a lot, and it did for me in the beginning too, is about your support jacks and storage. So you'll see if you go drive around, if you have an RV storage lot and you go drive around, it seems like half are up, half are down. Your tongue jack can hold all of it, right? That's not the issue. So a lot of people think that they're going to use these to take the weight off the tongue jack. Doesn't matter. However, what this does, right? Remember, you're not ever going to lift up the whole camper with these, right? Or any camper. This is stabilization only. Well, what it can do is take just enough pressure off that you're not sitting on your bearings. And now you're still going to have some weight on your bearings. You just don't have all of your weight on your bearings, especially if it's going to sit for a period of time. So that was a piece of advice that an old guy gave me that actually used to work at the lot that I'm at. And it served me well. So I just always have it down, have it tight, just like if I were to go camping, but that's it. And obviously I have supports below it. Here we're obviously on the street. If you're parking on concrete, great. You don't use supports. Otherwise, use a piece of wood, something like that, so that way your jacks don't sink in the mud, which was kind of an issue with us. So I've got a big, it's a 2x6, so that seems to work pretty well. But another thing, just like I said, to consider as you're storing it for a long period of time, I'd also suggest maybe you get a cover or something like that. Definitely wheel covers. It'll help prevent dry rot. Covers nice, wheel covers, and obviously, protect your investment if you can.